My name's Nancy Dickeman, and I have two poems included in this exhibit, Wind Sail and Reservation.
You are co-curator?
Right, co-curator. I've been curating the literary portion of the exhibit and also sort of co-founder of the concept and the exhibit, along with Steve, Diane, and Bill Witherup.
So tell us how Particles on the Wall came about.
Well, I think, partly in a conversation with sort of two goals. One of them, being a way to fuse the arts and the sciences and politics around an issue. And Hanford is an issue that concerned all four of us, and as well as bringing in sort of the broader peace ramifications. So we felt like, Hanford, by having people more aware of it and think about what has transpired at Hanford, the environment, but also the nuclear mission, that it is a way to sort of engage their thoughts and actions around current events and concerns.
And how did you go about selecting pieces for the show?
Well, kind of through research. Diane really solicited the visual artists, both through people that she knows and works with, and through other pieces that we found. Bill Witherup's sister, Sandra Hankins, actually owns one of the pieces, and so we had seen it at her house, the Mike Bristow piece, and so she's loaned it for the show. And then the literary work, I was looking for someone else who had come from Richland. Kathleen Flanagan is a poet who grew up in Richland and has done a lot of work around the Richland theme. And then Tom Buchanan is in addition to Kathleen and myself and Bill, of course, is the other poet included, and he's the artist in residence for Washington Physicians for Social Responsibility. And then the sort of the center point really of the poetry is Bill Witherup's poems that are ones that he did, around Hanford, also, Richland native, and it really just informed a lot of his work and political action. And since the exhibit is also sort of in memory of him, since he helped conceive the concept, but then didn't live to this point to see it happen.
You are a writer and a poet, is that right?
I'm a writer and a poet. I've been doing poetry, but I've done more essays recently. So I've been doing essays, and just completed a first novel that is set in Richland and Hanford.
And you grew up in Richland, right?
Yes, I did. So I went to school there and moved away in middle school, but did grow up there during the late 50s to mid 60s.
And how does that continue to influence your life?
Well, that's an interesting question. But I think, I guess maybe everybody's hometown calls them back in some way. But I think just the uniqueness of it and the sort of the depth of the science that was happening around us. And then, it's sort of a unique thing that to have left the area, and really it was in the mid-'80s when information became public about the releases that had happened. So that wasn't, even known prior to that. So I think that sort of also brought it back around to me again.
I mean, was that scary when you heard about that?
Well, it was in a way. I mean, it is, you wonder what all that means and what it will mean. I guess one thing I will say, since we lived right in Richland, a lot of the health effects are felt more actually by people who are downwind. So, from a personal standpoint, I'm not maybe that concerned, but just the whole concept of some of the things that happen. And I mean, I think, like my father was a physicist there, I think the scientists at the time, really believed in what they were doing and that they were doing the best. But I think it's one of those cases where, the technology, was sort of ahead of where they were in the whole spectrum of the science.
You have some of your writings there. Can you share some of that with us and tell us what you selected and why?
Sure. Yeah, I have just a paragraph or two from an essay I wrote called The Desert's Elements, and it's really reflections. One thing my family and I did was we visited the banks of the Columbia River when I was growing up, and this is sort of my reflections on that, my current reflections on that time. So, when walking along the river's edge, I tried to hang on to the sky's endless ceiling and to gauge proximity and distance. How far to the hills that swelled from desert ground? When the water pulled back, it uncovered a thin tidal flat, a scrap of silt brushed by overhanging branches. It was here that the desert's elements coalesced, the air heavy with dust and the river's spray. During our river visits, the air remained calm. I never quite perfected the wrist snap required to skip a stone from shore to midstream. As we drove away, the Columbia cut its way through the hills. The low mountains were marked by the scent of brush and earth, the violet hue burnished into hillsides, sagebrush defining the blurred distance. What lingers beyond memory's details is the sense that along these banks, the world had changed. The heat-struck earth remained with us, pocketed in the realms beyond breath. Still vast and powerful, the Columbia continues making its way to the sea. Mile after mile, it lays down turbulence and blue. The land keeps its muted colors, and the brittle plants thrive in the dry air. Both river and desert hold what they are given.